Hey, what's up, guys? Going over the more of the Luftwaffe 1946 comic work by Ted Nomura, and we got no technical manual. Obviously, this is from actually 2 decades ago at this point, and it covers the kamikaze term is a little misleading in terms of even with the Divine Wind, they were called special attacks. And it's essentially covering the German. You could argue near suicidal weapons that they were coming up with, and you're going to see what I'm talking about when I go through this. Just showing how desperate they were with the daily Allied bombing of this country. They were willing to try almost anything, think outside the box, anything with the limited resources they had to get stuff up in the air to put a hurting on these bombers, right? And so apparently this was a collaboration between well-known aviation researcher Justo Miranda of España, right? Basically going over these weapons, and of course these cool ones are not in this, but what they call the Triflugels, the Focke-Wulf Triflugels, the three, I guess, rocket-powered helicopter interceptors. How cool those are, man. So, imagine a planet where anyway, not going. So they go to the introduction of the idea of like these special attacks. They mention, of course, Goring, Hannah Reich, right? The idea that it wasn't necessary. The idea of ramming the enemy planes, which had been done not necessarily as a suicidal action, but sometimes as a desperation action or just out of sheer getting pissed off. Like, let's say if you're driving on the road, you ever feel like ramming somebody sometimes when you get into a little highway duel? Of course you don't. I don't. But, and they mentioned submarines, of course. They mentioned the Germans and the Italians, of course, the special attack missions. The Italians and the Japanese Navy and the Army, they had their own ramming explosive motorboats. Okay, of course, the Italian boat, you were supposed to jump out before. And, of course, the same thing with the Germans. And they mentioned here the history of it, where they had an American pilot early in the war. He had a damaged B-17 where he rammed it into a Japanese battleship. Actually, he didn't ram it. He was trying to keep it going so his crew could bail out. But I guess he accidentally or at the last second just hit the battleship. Interesting. Of course, he was a hero, not like the fanatical, idiotic, baka, right, subhuman Japanese. But and they go over here. They talk about the different ideas, special attacks. Justo Miranda of Madrid, Spain. Interesting. So a large list of German special project aircraft that were developed during the war and beyond. Special attack types. Right? Now, of course, the interesting thing is here is that you literally you have two ends of technology. They had you're not gonna believe this. I didn't even know this. Of course, you had glider, right? You had the gliders in World War II, mostly to land infantry. I guess I would rather jump out with a parachute than be in one of those things. But the Germans were going to use gliders to combat bombers. That was an idea. And of course, at the other end, they were going to try to use rocket-powered weapons. And they already had one. Was it the Comet? I think it was the Me-162. They had those in combat, but they had a lot more ideas. But from the ancient, because they had gliders in the ancient world, you know that. So from gliders to rockets, the desperation was there. Right? In real history, World War II ended in 1945. The sacrifices made by the men and women of all nations weren't in vain. Oh, come on, man. They were less than in vain, to be honest. Right? But it could have been a lot worse. It's only you haven't seen worse yet. But right, the idea that in desperation of war, you throw out conservative ideas and you start to go with what you can. You think outside the box, right? You had nothing to lose. They tested everything, right? So, and here's one. Whoa, look at that. That's the Zeppelin rammer, okay? This is a glider, an armored glider with wings that were made to do just this, and a rocket to give it a little extra boost, but they were to be towed up into combat, and then, of course, you would glide down after doing this. And like the tail gunner's like, the problem is the tail gunner is doing that. The guy doing in the glider is probably also doing that. Are you kidding? I'm not going in that. You are going to be the glider pilot. I'm like, wait till you see the other glider in here. Okay, and I'm only kind of joking, but halfway joking. Right, the BV-40, the Blom and Voss. Okay, the glider fighter, made with wood, which is ironic because many of their rocket powered and jet powered ideas were also made out of wood. I know you're like, what? So this is the fighter glider. This is to attack. This is to be towed up by an by a Messerschmitt. And actually, if you see pictures of this and the guy standing next to this, using my the guy, it's maybe like 4 feet high. This is a little thing, and it's so little that you couldn't even sit in it. And apparently, you were going to go up there. You were armed. You had a heavily armored front. You were also going to try to ram the ship after attacking it, although they advised try to not to do that. And they also had this other thing like this bomb dragging thing that you were also going to use as another secondary weapon along with your 30 millimeter cannons. Okay, are you kidding? What? I'm not going on that. Oh, American coward. I mean, the other one seemed like the one here. Yeah, this I take it. This I would try. This I would probably want to be in more than this. But anyway, holy cow! No, hell no. You know what I'm saying? And then you go to the opposite. You get the rocket powered, of course, the V2, right? The buzz bombs. But you also get they try to make piloted versions of these, but the G forces were too much, and so they had the idea of the piggyback thing where you would have this. Towed, brought up into, by another plane and then released. It made a lot more sense. Of course, this thing, I had gone over this thing before. This infamous, rocket. This is literally, launches vertically, right? It goes up. You have 10 minutes to do this stuff. Shoot these rockets. Very devastating rockets. And then the thing would basically supposedly the moon landing rocket. This would be what would happen. You couldn't even glide down. You don't have the wings for it. This was going to happen. It was going to go down a parachute, and you were going to parachute out of it. Okay. And P-51s weren't going to strafe you or the glider pilots or anything, but whatever. The whole idea was to get them up there and cause some havoc. So. Very interesting. Of course, the test flight they did with the guy died. It was pretty horrible, when they found him. But brave dude. So you have other variations of these things. Things so small, like you said, you're prone. Yeah, and different ideas. They were willing to try anything. Many didn't get past the testing stage. Of course, this made a lot of sense too, to save fuel, to bring the thing up, right? Almost like something you'd see in a Japanese 70s show or something. Like this idea. Yeah, of course, remember you had the ones where it was the opposite, where the Messerschmitt would have this kind of plane that would fly underneath it that wasn't manned, and that was actually a giant missile. They tried the Mistels. They tried those too, man. They tried everything. Look at this one. The nose of this thing is a huge rocket bomb that would be enough to cut a friggin' B-17 in half. It looks like something from that show UFO, the Jerry Anderson show. Interesting. And now, of course, this was the one with the picture I showed you, the Zeppelin rammer. So this was made, it was kind of cool, the idea that it would be towed up, the rocket would be there to give you a little kick to rip that tail off the B-17, which would, was the weak spot of those things. Of course, then you would glide down to Earth. Oh, just can imagine. Oh, God in heaven. And it just rounds out with some of these swept wing fighters that they had. Obviously, the Germans had discovered for jets and for rockets that the swept wing design was probably more aerodynamic. Okay, of course, you see this later in the MiGs and the Sabres in the 50s, but the Americans and the Soviets who took this technology essentially. So, and this one, what was this? The bomber carrier, right? I think was this the bomber they wanted to go to New York. I don't remember. But look at this thing. Now, what does this look like? This looks familiar. This design was used in Mobile Suit Gundam. You know, I believe for the Federation, had the supply ships were kind of based on these. So there's some of the profiles of the essay that Mr. Miranda wrote that appeared in his various comics. Of course, I haven't seen Kamikaze 46 yet. I get to see some of the Japanese designs. Actually, like I said, in Godzilla -1, you get to see the cool, Kiro Shinden, the Violet Lightning rear propeller aircraft. You actually see that in the film. Great film. I'm going to go over that at some point. And look, there's the Zeppelin rammer. Whoa. And look at these things. It's like essentially cruise missiles. What could have been? Uranium bomb. Oh, no. So, rounding it out, you get some of his product reviews, some old books. This is interesting. A book from the 60s. Right? Kamikaze, Aero Series, 1966. Which is interesting because they cover not just the Japanese weapons, they cover the German weapons like the Natter, right? Because essentially these were sort of suicide weapons. Whether they were gliders or rockets, some of these things were like basically you were rolling the dice to go in them. He goes over some of the comics too. The segue, I guess he added this in. Of course, Enemy Ace I've gone over. Okay, Haunted Tank, some of the DC stuff, but he also goes over. Right, D-Day from Charlton Comics, and he mentions, right, the story of the German officer in love with the French girl must decide if he wants to fight to the death or surrender on his birthday. That's the Willy Franz story. That's the first story he did, or that was the story he did that was huge. I had that comic. That was great. And of course, the Dell comics, where they literally were. They were historically educational products for young and old alike. Everything was based on an actual battle, And some of the other stuff, the Unknown Soldier, most dangerous role I've ever played. And he goes, of course, rounding it out with Van Zandt. Of course, I've gone over this a bunch of times. I'm going to do another review of the Van Zandt SS stuff. I think I was a little too cocky 5 years ago when I did it. A lot has happened in 5 years. So you get one of those videos at some point. And of course, Motofumi Kobayashi. Now, none of his World War II stuff has ever been, I don't believe, translated in America. Can imagine why, right? And this one in particular, right? Model Graphics, the Model magazine, used to serialize his comics. And this one here was basically based on Michael Wittman, the Tank Ace. But, Kobayashi, he loves drawing Eastern Front, German Panzer in combat. So now, once again, great stuff. But what is this? The opposite. The Losers. Now, I like the Losers. Look at that great artwork. And then you look at Jack Kirby took over the Losers. And I still to this day do not understand. You could say maybe the insanity and the craziness of it that he brought to it. But I just don't like his art style. For superheroes and horror, okay. But not for this stuff. Look at this. This is like... And it's funny, you have this character called Fatty. Little do you know that every other woman in America would look like this now. But it's just so stupid. The Losers were great. The Losers actually was one of the DC comics I could still read. Deadliest Man Alive. All right. But staying on course here. Look at this. What are you doing? But... the only reason I'm bringing this up is to say how horrible Kirby was on the Losers. But I was surprised. What is this? The Nazi superplanes. World War II ended before these troublemakers could hit the sky. Thank God for that. And they show, right, the Junkers, right, the winged bomber. It was just a wing. Of course, the Focke-Wulf Trieflügel, right, this thing. And of course, the Natter that we've been going over. Interesting that Kirby, I did not expect to see this in this comic. I bought this as a lark for like 50 cents. And now my man is doing Tigers of Terror, Ted Nomura, Luftwaffe 46 stuff. Look, the Daimler-Benz, a giant bomber, right? The larger aircraft would release the smaller aircraft, the long-range bomber. The HE-162. So... and this one, the Blom and Voss, I haven't even aware of this one here, right? So, just I didn't expect that from Kirby, so I think that was kind of cool, even if he screwed the losers up pretty badly. But regardless, always the war. So, all right, I'll take a break from the war. Or actually, no, I'm not. You're gonna see. You'll see.